All right, so today I want to talk to you guys about diet breaks. What is it? How do we use it? Should we use it? How often should we use it? How do we implement it? Things like that. So let's dive in. All right, so when we talk about a diet break, most people don't think about this thing until they hit a wall with their fat loss. A diet break is simply taking a strategic break from your diet, while it's called a diet break. But notice that it says it's a strategic break, not just a free for all, right? Now, you're probably thinking, yeah, cool deal. All this sounds counterintuitive. We're adding in, or we're taking a break from the food, right? We're trying to lose fat. Is this not counterintuitive? And it does sound counterintuitive, but here's the thing. If you've been in a deficit for quite some time, your body has adapted. At some point, pushing harder is doing more harm than good at this point. So the whole mindset of no rest days, keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing, all that's fine and dandy in certain aspects. But at some point, you need to pull back and pull some of that fatigue off. And that is exactly what a diet break is intended to do. So, first off, why do we even use a diet break? So, first off, if you've been dieting for, let's say, 3 to 4 months, right? 12 to 16 weeks, let's call it that. It's very likely that you're dealing with some sort of metabolic adaptation. And this is pretty much your body's way of saying, you know what, I've gotten pretty good at eating a lot less calories and functioning on a lot less food. So let's just stay there, right? That's your metabolic set point. So for us, what this looks like is your metabolism is going to slow down, your hunger is going to increase, you may feel more fatigued, and your progress stalls. Now, before we go any further, let's make sure that we're actually stalled if that is the case, right, in the fat loss process. And we don't have other things going on, such as just flat out not adhering to the plan or other issues like poor sleep, poor recovery, etc. So the main thing here is make sure that we actually are stalled in the fat loss phase before we do this, because if not, it is counterintuitive at that point. Um, Now, especially if you're in a serious fat loss phase or even a bodybuilding prep, right, where a pretty low body fat percentage is what we're after, you'll eventually reach a point to where cutting calories from your meal plan just isn't doable, right? You can only go so low. And there's only so much fat and carbs that you can take out of the diet before you're running on fumes, you're seeing a drop in training performance, and you just feel mentally fried and fatigued. You have that brain fog, right? This is when a diet break can come into play and become a game changer. Now, the benefit of a diet break, there's a couple things that we'll touch base on here. The biggest thing that we need to emphasize first is a properly implemented diet break. Um, Say that again, a properly implemented diet break can do a couple things for us, right? Number one, it's going to replenish our glycogen stores inside of our body. So our training is going to feel more energized again. We're going to have more energy. We're going to feel strong again. It's going to improve our mood, hopefully reduce any kind of burnout that you're probably having from the dieting phase, right? It's going to give you like, it's going to give your metabolism a little bit of a boost. It's not going to change it drastically though, but it will slightly to a degree. It's not really going to change your RMR, which is your resting metabolic rate, but it can slightly. But that's not the main driver here. It'll reduce hunger and hopefully any kind of food obsession that you're having, right? It can improve sleep as well too, which and then in turn will lead to more fat loss simply because we're reducing cortisol. In the shorthand, a diet break is going to be helpful just because it makes you feel better. It's going to make you train harder. And it kind of gets you out of this repetitive 16, 12 week trajectory of just, being in the negative essentially for quite a long time, right? Now, when to implement a diet break is also key as well too. Now, you should consider a diet break when you've been in a deficit for at least 12 weeks. Let's just say that, right? You've slowed or you've stalled fat loss. And let's go back to the initial part of the video. We got to make sure that we're actually stalled first. You're mentally struggling to stay consistent, right? Or you're heading into the final leg of a prep and you need just that one last chance to go up, get a breath of air before you go back under, right? That's kind of the way that I see it as well too. Um, And then if you're going to implement the diet break, it's probably a good idea as well to also implement some sort of deload from your training that week as well too. I'm not saying go full out skip the gym for this entire time. You can if you want to and really try to wash that fatigue off, but you could just do a deload, 60% of what you typically do in the gym, and that'll be sufficient enough. Now, how do we actually implement the diet break? So, the first thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to raise your calories to your estimated maintenance, right? So, you can base this off of two things: where you were at your last holding phase, or you use the weight from your last week's measurements, right, to estimate your current maintenance. So, let's just say, for instance, if you dropped 1.2 pounds from last week's check-in to this week's check-in, right? We know 3,500 calories over the span of a week will give us a 1 pound rate of loss, right? So if we do that simple math, 1.2 times 3,500, that's 4,200. We divide that by seven, that's going to give us 600 additional calories to work with to put us back toward our quote unquote maintenance, right? Our current maintenance at that point in time. So you'll have 600, for this example in itself, you'll have 600 additional calories, right? And with these calories, use them from carbohydrates. Um, for two reasons. Number one, it's going to refill the glycogen stores that you just have depleted. And then in turn, it's going to give you a little bit of a training boost in the gym, right? I would keep the protein and the fats the same during the diet break. If you get into the refeed side of things, you can then play with a little bit of maybe lower the protein a little bit to give you a little more uppage for the carbohydrates. But in this scenario in itself, the diet break, I would just leave protein and fat alone. For the above example or the previous example, that 600 calorie mark, just add in the whole 600 calories from carbohydrates, right? And while you're doing that, it's also important to make sure that we stick with your usual food choices. This is going to keep digestion steady and it's going to reduce the risk of overeating. So if you're normally eating rice, potatoes, muffins, fruit, that kind of thing, and then you get this additional request from your coach, or you yourself is going to give yourself a diet break, and you have 600 additional calories to play from. Let's don't go in the pantry and start digging out the pancake mix and doing all this extra stuff that you haven't been using for a while. We don't want to risk getting our digestion off track. We don't want to risk having a binging episode. So if you've been using not chicken, rice, potatoes, fruit, then just add in more rice, potatoes, fruit. It's that simple. The next thing is just make sure that you track everything. Just because it's a break from the diet doesn't mean that it's a free for all. You still want to have some structure, as this is a very structured diet break that we're doing. It shouldn't even be titled a diet break because that kind of gives it a bad connotation. Just like a cheat meal, I call that a free meal. A cheat meal already has the inclination that you're cheating on your diet, but if I give you that cheat meal or a free meal in your plan, then it's not really cheating. But anyway, um, keep your routine the same as much as you can. Stick to your regular meal timing, sleep schedule, that kind of thing. And if you are actually doing a deload in your training, keep that schedule the same. And if you're just going to take the whole, couple of days off, then that's fine as well too. Um, and then lastly, just don't drag it out. Typically most people don't need a full 7 day diet break. Some could benefit from it, but from what I've seen, the most part, 3 to 4-ish day diet break is typically good enough. Keep in mind that the diet break, we're doing this in an effort to wash fatigue away. That's kind of the main purpose, the main benefit of using the diet break. Um, if we can push it maybe another day or two to give you more of a psychological effect, that's fine. But we always want to keep in mind that we want to use the shortest effective dose to restore training performance, continue fat loss, and just wash away that fatigue, right? So in the shortest amount of time that it takes to do this, let's just do it, right? So now, once you're in the diet break, there's some things that you're going to want to look for. Initially, it's going to be a weight drop. You're going to have less water retention when cortisol drops. You're going to shed a little bit of water as well too. Better sleep and increase NEAT, which is more just movement throughout the day, right? You're probably going to look leaner if you're in a lean enough state, which you should be if you're doing a diet break. You're going to have more glycogen and more water, which is going to equal fuller muscles. You're going to look tighter, kind of like adding water to a balloon, makes it bigger and puffy, right? Um, and then your training should feel better, should feel stronger. If you're in a diet break and you're not feeling a lot, if your training is not improving, even if you are in that deload, you may need to increase the carbs maybe just a little bit. But also be aware during this as well too that you may have a risk at binging. If you've had an issue before with binge eating and things like that, then this needs to be a very fine line that's walked, and then you may see a slight weight gain, and if you do, that's okay. But more likely, if it's just a very small amount, it's from glycogen and it's from water, right? You're essentially refilling those glycogen stores, and with every little bit of glycogen, without going into too much detail, with every little bit of glycogen that goes into the muscle cell, water follows it as well too. So you're going to have just an initial weight bump, probably from that glycogen loading into your body, right? Now, final thoughts with all of this. A diet break just isn't a cheat week, right? It's a strategic tool to help you continue to make progress. Um, if we think about it in a term like this, it'll probably make a little more sense to you. It's going to be one less week in a deficit, which is going to then equal one more week of effective fat loss down the road that you're going to have to add. So this is not something that you just add in just because, hey, I'm on a diet break. If it's for mental acuity, maybe that's okay. But keep in mind, once you pull out of the active fat loss, you have to make up for that on the back end as well too. So if you're feeling stuck, drained, things are not moving, and here's the caveat: you have to have good adherence to make those kind of decisions, right? If all that's being accounted for, this might just be your body's way of asking for a pause, pull back a little bit, go into a diet break. Don't quit. This is just a reset strategy, if you will. And then even if you're in a prep phase, and you can't just quit, or you can't just kind of pull your foot off the pedal a little bit. Um, there's other things that we can do accompanied with a diet break, where we can be more calculated with your energy output and your caloric expenditure, things like that. But mainly, those diet breaks can help us stay sharp, and responsive to the stimulus that we're trying to put upon the body, as long as we're very coherent with what we're doing and we're not overdoing it. So um, that is what a diet break is. That is how it should be implemented, how it should be used, how to set it up, things like that. And I wanted to answer a question that I had inside of the chat earlier. It was, what is the difference in between a refeed and a diet break? It's fairly simple. A refeed is anywhere from 1 to 3-ish days. A diet break is 3 to 4-ish days and up, right? Now, there is some argument that a diet break is essentially just a bunch of refeeds stacked upon each other, and you could make that argument, right? I mean, a refeed can also be used to stop such an aggressive fat loss from occurring, right? If your rate of loss is getting too high in a fat loss phase, you can throw a refeed in there to try to maybe slow that down. And this is going off on a whole another tangent, but you could also raise up that base plan level as well too, to kind of slow that down. So really, the only difference between a refeed and a diet break is the duration, for the most part. And granted, there is a couple of differences. I'm not going to be too nitpicky about that and try to say, well, you're wrong if this is not in there, and you're wrong if this is in there. But for the most part, a diet break and a refeed, they're both about washing away fatigue, adding in a little bit of food just to kind of help the client out, or if it's you doing it to yourself, kind of get the most bang for your buck without just running yourself straight into the ground and just piling up more and more fatigue. So I appreciate you guys tuning in. If you like this kind of content, please like, share, subscribe, share it with your friends. I really appreciate it. And until next time, I'll see you guys later.